Welcome to the Terminal Exchange, the official podcast of Nussbaum Transportation, where we explore key issues and compelling stories in the trucking industry. I'm your host, Sage Anderson, and you're listening to episode 102, Anthony Whitmore's Long Haul to Redemption. Sometimes God can answer us in our darkest moments in the most unexpected ways. Anthony's story will give you hope that God can work through our pains, addictions, and failures to bring about His good purpose in our life. Tune in more on this featured exchange to hear this gripping story of faith. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you.
Anthony first stood out to me because, you first stood out to me because I think I was talking to Tian at the front, and we were talking about how far some people travel for work. And you came in as a driver into the office, and I found out that you drove an hour and 10 minutes to get to work, which means another hour and 10 minutes to get home. And yet, when I met you, you looked so happy. You didn't seem tired or weary, and maybe some of us are more faint-hearted, but a drive that long would be hard for me. And you're really happy to be here. So, why don't you explain a little bit what makes this drive and this time worth it to be at Nussbaum?
I think that for me, the time here and the travel here and the travel home is time for me to really just unwind and be grateful for everything that I have in my life. Mm-hmm. Coming from where I've dug myself out of to where I am today, it's sometimes easy to forget about the things that have made you. Yeah. And for me to make that drive, and in the morning I'm replaying my evening, my day, or what's going on, and for me it's easy to take that time and pray and be conscious of how many blessings I've been blessed with over the last 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, that's...
So let's start. Let's hear your story. Who is Anthony Whitmore? Where did you come from, and where are you today?
Right. So I was born and raised up in Princeton, Illinois area. I went to Western High School. I had on the surface what looked like a really normal upbringing. I had a wonderful mom and stepdad that raised me, and 3 stepbrothers. But there was traumatic events that happened at a really young age, between the ages of 4 and 5. There was some pretty serious, severe abuse that took place that nobody knew about, and I harbored that inside for many years. It never really opened up or talked about those specific events. My mom and dad divorced when I was 3, mm-hmm. So it was just my mom and I, and she had got a great job and met my future stepfather, who then they obviously got married, and we all lived together, and it was just pretty normal. I was really big into athletics. I had a stepbrother that was the same age as me, so we went through like first grade on through high school together. Playing basketball, football, track, every sport you can think of, we did, and it seemed really good. But I knew I had this. I was different. I felt different. I was only child, so like I had the only last name Whitmore, and my rest of my families were the O'Briens. So it kind of felt weird. So I kind of felt ostracized in that manner. Nobody personally made me feel that way. It's just kind of how I felt. Yeah. And then you put that with the abuse that took place that nobody knew about, and then like in that time frame, divorce and like step siblings wasn't really prevalent. Like it was kind of starting out and coming on. So there was a lot of different things that I kind of I tucked under and didn't really address or deal with. And I don't know. I mean, life sometimes just throws you curveballs, and some people can handle those different than others. I think due to all those previously mentioned circumstances, it caused me to be more susceptible to addiction.
Yep.
And that's the road I ended up on.
Okay.
I spent the better part of like 20 plus years in a deep, dark addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just with it was all drugs. It was more of anything that would alter my mind. It was pretty bad. I was anti-society. I was an atheist. I didn't want any part of being in this life, this nice, neat picket fence life. I thought it was ridiculous, and I think a lot of that was just a defense to make it okay to live the way I lived.
Sure.
Through the years, I've lost a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I've three ex-girlfriends to overdose. I mean, countless. Last time I really dug into it is like over 20 friends have died to either suicide or overdose. There was one time where my brother and I, this stands out quite strong in my daily prayers or thoughts is we were out in the cornfield doing some things illegal, and I remember looking out over the distance and saw this farmhouse. I looked at my brother. I said, "Man," I said, "why can't we have a life like that?" Now, we were from a life like that. We had, very successful mom and dad, and he looked at me and he said, the only way this thing's gonna end is 6 feet under or in prison. And I just remember how hard that hit me at that moment. Like, I don't think I'd ever felt more alone and scared and couldn't figure out what I had done wrong. I mean, and I was in my 30s at this point, and it wasn't too many years later where he was right. The feds caught up to us and what we were doing, and we got federally indicted for conspiracy to distribute and manufacture methamphetamines. And it was pretty wild how it all took place. I remember after that conversation with my brother, it was probably about a year or so later, I was in the garage doing some, I was cooking dope, and I remember I had fallen asleep in the middle of it and about blew up the garage. And it was the first time since I was probably in junior high or maybe early high school that I had prayed, and I didn't really know who I was praying to or what I was praying to because my beliefs were so messed up. But I remember like breaking down. It was 2 days before my stepson's birthday. It was December, and right before Christmas, right before his birthday. And I just remember saying, "Please help me. This was in 2011. I'm like, I just need help. I can't stop. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm lost. I need help." And being able to piece this all together obviously took time. It's not like these events took place and I was able to see these as blessings.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like blessings when you're going through it.
Sure.
But, excuse me, it was 3 or 4 days later, they raided our house. They arrested me and my son's mom, and they took us into county jail, and they charged us with manufacturing materials, and we sat from December 18th or so until the middle of January of 2012. My father, who I had a relationship with, but barely, he didn't raise me. He came and bonded me out, and one of the conditions of him bonding me out was that I would seek treatment. So I had honestly wanted to get in treatment for many, many years. There were several times where I had suicide attempts, and they would talk to me, and I would want to get in treatment, and then I would make a phone call, and I didn't have insurance, and it became more of a hassle, and it was just easier to keep using, and I'm just like, no, I can't afford it, so obviously nobody cares about me. So it was just that repeated behavior of, like, I had the abuse that happened, nobody cared about me. My father left, nobody cares about me. Nobody sees the pain and struggles I'm going through, nobody cares about me. It's all this self-worth things that were tearing me down. Anyways, we got lined up with going to a rehab facility. I showed up there I finally got a bed February 14th of 2012. And I showed up really high, and it was not a good deal. I sat there for 3 days before I could really even be around the rest of the people at the rehab. And then a week later, it was a Monday, the feds came to the rehab, and they were looking for me to indict me for my charges.
Okay.
They had arrested my son's mother, and earlier that day, and I was arraigned at 1600, I think it was on the 28th. So they took me in, and I was sitting, I'll never forget where I was sitting on the floor in a cell, and it hit me because I was looking at 20 years to life.
Wow.
And it was a mandatory minimum of 20 to life. And I just felt like my life was over at that moment. It was.
And was this be your first time in prison?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I had gotten arrested earlier. So what it was is I had got arrested in 2009 for a possession charge. It was a felony possession, and I did 6 months in county and got out. And I think that's obviously what put us on the radar.
Sure.
And then in 2011, in December, is when they raided our house, and we got arrested again. And I remember being there, and they're questioning me then, and I said, I took responsibility. I said, listen, everything you found is mine. I was doing this. So I kind of admitted to everything that we did. I'm like, listen, I was cooking meth. It was for me and my girlfriend at the time, and she didn't know anything about it. Yada yada yada. Well, all of that gave them enough evidence to indict us federally versus state-wise, in which ultimately all became a blessing. It's crazy to think, like, when you're going through that, I didn't feel like my prayers were being answered.
Yeah.
Because it feels like, holy cow, here we go again. Nobody cares about me. My life's in shambles.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later on through my recovery that I was able to look back and be like, oh, thank you, God. Like, you really did everything that needed to happen. If things didn't happen exactly how they happened from 2000, really from all of life, but if they didn't go down the way they did, I wouldn't be able to sit here today. There's no question I wouldn't be alive today.
Yeah.
So it's just wild to think, like, I was sitting there in that cell looking at 20 years to life, and I'm just praying, God, please help me. I don't know what to do. I know I haven't been the best steward. I know I haven't been the best Christian. I know I'm not that person. I'm not the person that they're painting me out to be. I need help. Please help me.
Yeah.
And they denied me probation, or they denied me pretrial, which is to get out and fight your case. So I had no bond. I couldn't get out on pretrial. However, 2 months after sitting in county, they came to me and said, listen, since you were in rehab when we came and indicted you, we'll allow you to go back to rehab. And it's so crazy because I was just praying, please help me, give me the tools I need to have a life, right?
Yeah.
Well, 2 months later, I'm released into the rehab custody And that's really where my journey started. I mean, I met an amazing guy, Chris, who was my counselor. He was my counselor when I was there when they indicted me. I met some good friends, like Frank, who I still talk to this day, in rehab. But it was just so eye-opening to be sober for the first time in over 20 years. To get sober, so I got sober for like 2 weeks in county, and then got out and was getting high again until I got indicted, which was like another month. And then I was sober for 2 months, and they took me back into rehab. Well, to get that clear head and this fresh start, I was just like, listen, I got to run with this. This is the rest of my life. This is my opportunity to turn it around. I know I'm better than what I've been.
Yeah.
I know God's got a plan for me. There's been many others that have lost their life, and I'm yet still here. I need to really pay attention. So I just kind of soaked everything up in rehab, really put my heart and soul into all of it, prayed a lot, went to church a lot, got baptized on my own. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that I was in my darkest days in my addiction and a non-believer, and then I find a renewed faith and my life begins to blossom. I just don't think I think it's real, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt in my mind why and how come that happened.
So at the rehab facility, was it like a Christian place, or you met, so like how did your faith begin to start again?
So there, my counselor and I were talking, and we were talking about prayers, and he's like, well, I couldn't leave the facility, and the only way I could leave is if I went to church or if I went to like an AA or an NA meeting. And so I was going to everything, and it was on the south side of Peoria, and I was going to a church down there on the south side, and they opened their arms and accepted me, and it was amazing. And they all gave me, everybody at the church was just so, I can't even describe how amazing it was. Like nobody judged me. Everybody built me up, and it was like, you know, hey, just keep coming back and keep doing the right thing. And this whole time I'm all alone. Like I've got my mom that I can talk to, and I see my son every once in a while. But my brother, he's in prison. My girlfriend at the time, we had a no contact order, so we couldn't talk. So it was just me and the people. So, and that was such a blessing too, because it allowed me to rebuild my life.
Yeah.
And from there, it was about I was doing everything I can. I got a job. They allowed me to stay out while I fought my case. They kept saying, no matter what, you're going to get 20 years. There's no way around it. I had a good attorney. But there just really wasn't much I could do because it was a conspiracy case. Although it was only a conspiracy between my girlfriend and I. Like a lot of these cases, there's like 20 or 30 people, but it was just the two of us. There wasn't much we can do. The only thing I had going for me is I had no criminal background. And luckily it turned out there was a loophole for 0 criminal history points to where you could get, I don't remember what it was called, but it's 87 months is for first-time offenders. It rarely happens. They usually knock people's head off. And the long short of it was the people that were in office at that time were pushing for lighter sentencing for first-time offenders, and they made some changes in the federal program, like federal sentencing guidelines, and that really saved me. Again, prayers answered. I'm praying like, hey, I'm not a terrible guy. I shouldn't do 20 years. I mean, I would still be there. I mean, I wouldn't get out till 29.
Wow.
And it's just crazy to think of. I mean, I would have lost out on all this amazing things that I've done in the last 8 years, you know. Long story short, that I got out. I went to rehab. I was there for 90 or 106 days. I worked really hard. I got a job landscaping and just doing whatever I could. I was going to church every Sunday and going to like the AA and NA and getting to spend time with my son and my mom. And the whole time they just kept saying, you're going to get 20 years, you're going to get 20 years. And it just kept weighing on me. And on July 3rd of 2013, I had had many other suicide attempts by taking handfuls of pills or whatever, but I tried to kill myself. I had met a girl that we were dating, and she relapsed and started to shoot heroin again. And I called her up, and I went there knowing like I didn't care anymore. I gave up. I gave up again because I just couldn't fathom doing 20 years. It felt like a lot. And they had misdiagnosed me as being bipolar because I was depressed about doing 20 years. So they had fed me some medicine for that, and it's just all this kind of got messy. And so I relapsed on July 3rd of 2013. I OD'd, but it was exactly what I needed because I came to, and I remember gasping for air, and it was the first time in a long time that I felt grateful and happy to be alive. And I was like, I don't want to die. And from that moment until now, I've never had a thought other than I want to do everything I can to live as long as I can. Everybody's point is different. You don't have to hit rock bottom to hit rock bottom. That moment in my life, it was huge. I ended up turning myself into my probation officer. I was incarcerated then, and that's when my sentence started. I sat in county for a year, got sentenced, and then did roughly 40 months in federal prison camp. I got released on September 6th of 2016. And I had spent the entire time incarcerated working on myself, working out, being healthy, I went to RDAP, which was like an inpatient drug thing that they had, which was nice. I met an amazing lady there who is my RDAP, my specialist there, and she unlocked this whole self-worth problem that I had.
Sure.
I was able to dig deep into why, and it was, first time I talked about the trauma from when I was super young, and all these things kind of just started going poof, and these light bulbs started going off in my head. It's like, holy cow, this happened, and this is why this happened. And man, I prayed in that garage, and God blessed me with being arrested. Like, who would, And I did 40 months in federal prison and had been happier in those 40 months than I could ever remember. And I remember sitting there all the time. In there, you work hard at, I worked hard at becoming a better person every day. And I feel like doing the routine of getting up and trying to be healthy and trying to pray and trying to read the Bible and reading the books and doing the things that I needed to do to become a better human being, I would lay there and think about all this, and you have no idea what your life's going to be. And I know what it's been. I know what I want. And I remember I'd listen to music and I'd pray, and I just want to find a nice person, somebody I can grow old with, and somebody I can stay young with, or a good job. I would love to get that house, not that specific house, but that land out in the country. There's these things and these goals. And you're laying in that cell and you're thinking, how am I going to attain all this? And all I knew, as long as I continued to be a good human being and had faith and move forward and not dwell, but also don't forget. Then everything's going to be okay, right? And that's what I just told myself over and over and over again. And it's just wild to sit back here today to think about where I was on September 6, 2016, and where I am today. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, there's a verse, I'm not going to say it perfectly, but essentially God talks about three things and says, like, what does the Lord require of you? But to walk humbly with him, to love mercy, and to do justly. And when you share your story, it just reminds me of all those things. The first thing that you had to do was walk humbly with God, and just to be open and repentive and say, I know I've done wrong. And it sounds like when you had that meeting and you just told them the confession, like, this is all mine. This is my things. This is what I've been doing. You took the blame. And then, so you're walking in humility. And then your mercy is what God has given you. He was so merciful to shorten your sentence and to put you in a good place. And in return, I could see that fruit in your life too. And then just to do justly is, again, you saw your time in prison as justice, as fair, as, okay, I'm sober, I'm essentially protected in this place, and I'm taking this time to walk with God. And so it's really hard to be in the situation and to see, like, how can God be working this for good when, like, I'm in such a hard spot of my life. Like, how can God work out these hard circumstances for his glory and for his good? But it sounds like sometimes we have no idea how to pray. Like, and it's so wonderful to hear stories of people having these moments of prayer before they even realize who they're even praying to, like, before they even have that relationship or connection with God. But to know, like, in our innermost being, like, there is a God and he does hear me.
Yes.
And to have those prayers, and then to realize, like, wow, he could answer this in a way that is completely opposite of what I think it's going to go. But to still trust God in that. I think about the story of Job and how, he had all these blessings and then they were taken away from him, and then he got just double-fold. And it wasn't anything necessarily in Job's life that he did wrong, but it just drew him closer to God, a deeper relationship with him. And so, it's such a beautiful thing to hear your story, to hear your humility, and to recognize, like, this is what God has done for me. Right. And now, I'm just walking in this gift of life. Right. So I'd love to keep hearing your story. So you are released. Yeah. You have this prayer now for a special someone. Right. How did you get to Nussbaum? How did you get married? What happens next?
So, like, to the scripture parts, my prayer that I kept in my forefront was Jeremiah 29:11. Mm-hmm. For some reason, that stuck out to me. I was in church one day, and it was like the focus scripture. Yeah. And it was, I'm not going to remember it verbatim, but it was mostly, it's, I know the plans I have that God has for me. They're not to hurt me, they're not to harm me, but to make me better and to make me stronger. Yeah. And knowing that and believing that is something I leaned on for those years. And when I got out, I just took off running. I mean, I got out, I got my driver's license that first day, and I had called a friend I had met in rehab who ran a painting company, and he hired me for $8 an hour to paint houses. It was in September, so it was at the end of the season, and I was like, look, I just need to do something. I was in the Federal Halfway House downtown Peoria, and my grandpa and my mom, they had a truck for me, and so I was very blessed that I had 2 bags of clothes, I had a vehicle, and then I had a job and I had a license. And at that time, I felt like I had the world. Oh. And it was just like, it's like, here I go. I'm out. I'm gonna build my life. I know what I want, and I'm not gonna allow anything to get in my way. Yeah. And if there's any kind of negativity or any kind of hate or any kind of anything that's going to bring me down, it's not going to be a part of my life. I just remember I had no friends, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're literally all alone. And I don't know, it was crazy. I remember I was painting houses, and I was telling my story to my foreman, my boss that I was painting with, and he was just like, wow, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe you're here. You know what I mean? And I have a really good work ethic, and I was staying as late as I could, painting houses and stuff. And he kept talking about how he met this girl on Match.com. And I'm like, I haven't been part of society for a little while. Even prior to going to prison, I really wasn't part of society, so I didn't know anything about online dating or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, he's like, oh yeah, get on Match, and so I paid the $30, which I was making $8 an hour. It doesn't go very far.
Yeah.
And then I was living in the halfway house. I paid the $30 to get on Match. And the guy who I got the job from painting had a house for rent on the south side. And he said, if you want to, you can meet me over there and we can take a look at it. If you feel like fixing it up for me, you can live in it. Wow. So we went over there, and it was bad. It was probably one of the worst places I've seen. And I told him that I would work there every evening after work and on the weekends. And I did that for a month. And about 2 weeks into it, I signed up for Match. And I'm like, and that was just, wow, that was weird. I could not hardly wrap my head around what was going on there. And I'm like, this is no good. Like, everybody's fake. I was, you know what I'm saying? Like, it didn't feel right. My subscription was about to run up, and I was about to be done with it. I'm just like, it'll happen when God sees fit. Like, I'm not going to worry about it. And I had just finished remodeling the house. I had to redo everything. I mean, the floors, the walls, the drywall, the mud, tape, paint, everything. And it was like brand new. Yeah,
right there. Doesn't that just feel almost like a picture of like what God was doing in your own life? Of like taking something that seems just, I don't want to call it ruined, but like in need of so much restoration and fixing it. So to be able to like go to this house and to physically do this work. Right. That's a really neat picture.
It was amazing. Like, honestly, the fact that it worked out like that I got to, that he was like, yeah, here, if you can fix this up, you can live here. Yeah. I got a raise. I mean, life seemed really good. You know what I mean? Like, so the day I was moving in, I had sent a message to Michelle on Match, and then my subscription was going to end in like, I think it was like a week or something like that. And I'm like, I'm done with this. And anyways, she actually reached back out, which was like, I think she was like one of the only people that would reach out that was a normal person. Anyways, we started talking, and we were texting back and forth. And I had just moved in to my house, which there's no better feeling than to have done the remodel. And then I had got on Facebook and bought like some girl was selling her whole, like, basically her whole apartment for a few $100s because she was going through some things. So I bought a couch and all this stuff, and I was able to furnish my house. And I remember sitting there, and there was no greater feeling than like, hey, I'm doing this, you know. Then she messaged me back, and we started talking back and forth, and she wanted to meet up and get some dinner on Friday night or something like that. She's like, oh, I want to meet you, let's do this. And I'm like, hey, I'm driving home. I said, listen, I stopped, I texted her, I said, I'm driving, but can I call you in 10 minutes? So I got home, and I called her up, and we'd only been talking for, I think, not even 10 days, like maybe a week, just texting, right, messaging. And I had to tell her, hey, listen, I have a curfew and have to be home by 9 p.m. I'm on federal probation. This is my backstory. So our first phone conversation was me telling her everything about what has happened. And she's just laughing. And I couldn't get it. And she's just like, oh, she goes, my friend told me there's no way somebody can work out as much as you and not be in prison or something, or not just get out of, or asked her when did he get released. She goes, and she was like defending me, like, well, it doesn't mean he was in prison to be fit. And it turned out I had just gotten out of prison. So I made her a liar right off the bat. So, but anyways, we ended up hanging out, and she has never, she's as far from understanding like addiction or anything like that as you can get, but she saw me for me. And I want to say that I really feel like there's been a lot of people that since I've been out have seen me for who I am, but it was in that moment really where she knew my story, but she saw me for who I really am today. And our journey together over the last 7 years has been pretty amazing. Like she had a house in Bloomington, and then I lived in this house that I was renting from my boss. And it just, it just took off. Like we really hit it off. We had a lot in common. We get along amazingly. I don't know. I couldn't be where I am if it wasn't for God. But he's definitely made it a lot easier by putting her in my life. Yeah. And opened a lot of doors for me. We've had a lot of ups and downs, just like anybody does. Sure. But nowadays, when things are bad and things aren't going right, it's just a day. It's just a moment. I know that it's gonna pass. I know that we're gonna get through. I know that there's nothing I can't overcome. It doesn't seem so dark and gloomy. I think the biggest thing I walk away from all this is life is amazing, and every moment you get, you need to cherish it. Because I've had too many phone calls or too many messages of, hey, so-and-so passed away last night, or so-and-so overdosed. And you never know when your time is up. So you just have to cherish every moment that you have. Our journey to get here was a little different. I was working for that same outfit painting, and then I started doing bathroom remodels and decks and sunrooms, and I ended up changing companies to where one of my best friends from high school was working, who I hadn't talked to for many, many, many years, but developed a new relationship with him again since I was on the right path, and got my foot in the door there, and was working there for about a year, and we bought a house. And so I got my nice little 10 acres of property out in the middle of the country, which in turn makes me drive an hour and 10 minutes each way. So I gladly will drive that hour and 10 minutes each way, because it's been something that I've always wanted. And it's just wild to think that every prayer that I've had, that I've made, has seemingly been answered. They're not going to just poof, there it is. It takes some elbow grease. You have to get in there and do the work, and believe in yourself, and be a good person. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but I got laid off for the winter after we bought the house, and I mean, there's just a lot of things, I got a new mortgage. I've never bought a house, and now I no longer have any income. And with being the kind of seasonal work, like bathrooms was kind of up and down, and then doing decks and sunrooms is seasonal, we just thought it was best to get my CDL. So we had a savings. I spent our entire savings to get my CDL. I can drive a truck. I drove a truck many years before I had my CDL. I drove a tandem dump out in New Jersey when I probably shouldn't have been. So it was easy going through that, and I loved it, and it allowed us to have some financial comfort. But when I got my license, nobody would hire me. Because of my background. I was currently on federal probation. I had 10 years of federal paper, and I had been out now for almost 2 years, I think it was. So I got 16, so it was like 18, end of 18. So I'd been out for a while. We'd bought a house. I mean, obviously, I had been doing well, but like some of the bigger places, like the Schneiders and JB Hunt's, whatever. Every place. My buddy. So I had 4 friends that have driven their whole life, and they're like, "Oh, hey, get your CDL. You'll get a job." So I got my CDL. I spent $4,000 or whatever it was on getting my license, and I'm getting unemployment and trying to keep things going. And I thought I had a job with TMC. And I was my buddy lived out in Des Moines, and I was going to go stay with him. And this was on a Thursday or Friday, I think it was. And I was leaving Saturday to go stay out there because I started on Monday. And they called me back, and I said, "No, we're sorry, we're not going to be able to take you on because of this, because your record." And I was like, man. So I called my instructor at the CDL school I went to, and he told me I needed to call over here. So I did. And I talked to Mark, who was actually the recruiter at the time.
Yeah. And
he's like, "Yeah, come on in." So I remember coming in here, and I'll never forget coming in here. Like it was just the one building down there. And I remember sitting out there on the couch, and then they had like the words.
The mural, "Unless the Lord builds a house, the laborers work in vain."
Yes. And I remember sitting there. I was like, "Oh wow, that's amazing! Like, this is great. It's beautiful. It's amazing." And they have like integrity and all that on the walls. And when I was in RDAP, those were like the big, really huge like integrity. And I'm freezing up, and I can't think of the words. But anyways, it was all there. And I'm like, man, this is wild. And I met Tian, and we talked, and she was just so wonderful and made me feel so comfortable. And we talked a little bit about the life of being a trucker, and is Michelle going to be okay? And she was really caring and concerning about it. And then I met Dale, and we did the road test, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're good." Like,
so with all this, did they already know about your background before you came in, or was that like...
No, Mark did.
Mark did, okay.
Yeah. And so I left, and they're like, I said several times, I said, "Mark, are you guys sure? Because I can't be let down again." And I'm like, "I'll come in. I want to come in for it." "Oh, come on in. Let's do this." It's been longer than this time. I'm like, "Yeah, it's been this long. It's been over 90. It's been a year and a half, almost 2 years." So I came in, and it went well. And I just remember, like, they said, "Okay, well, you're going to start April 1st." And
April Fools.
I'm like, are you being serious right now? Like, April, are you serious? And they're like, "Oh yeah, no, April 1st. And it was such a stressful time from the moment I got laid off until April, because it was, we had just bought the house earlier in like midsummer, and then I got laid off like right around Christmas. So then from Christmas to April, I did the driving school and was trying to just keep things moving. And all the doors that were closed, I couldn't get a job driving anywhere. And I'm like, "Oh man, did I make a big mistake?" Like, holy cow, I think I may have just wasted nearly $5,000. Like, nobody's going to hire me. And for me, it was kind of a twofold, because when I am not that, like, when I got sober and got clean and have started living my life, the person who I was died, and I am who I am now. Yeah. But to have that continually hinder everything that I'm trying to do along the way, like buying a house, oh my gosh, it was the worst nightmare. I mean, it was so bad trying to buy that house. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had, was trying to buy that house. We got through it, with a lot of prayer and a lot of just doing the right thing and trudging forward. This doesn't happen just poof, here it is. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of moments where it's like, holy cow, this is a lot.
Yeah.
To drive away from here, feeling the way I felt, like the relief of knowing, hey, I know I've got a job now that's a good job at a good place, And I really didn't really know how good of a place yet, because you're just starting, but it felt good. And I drove away, and I was nearly in tears telling her, hey, I got a job. I'm starting April 1st. And I'm like, so we're going to be okay. And it seems like a great, amazing place. And I just still can't believe that God brought me here. All the trucking companies. I mean, this wasn't like I didn't apply here only and got here. Like I could have landed at any of these other places, but the fact that this started from one prayer in 2011 in a garage from somebody who was broken and scared, and I land here at such a faith-based company where you can freely say, hey, God's amazing. Yeah. And you can pray and you can talk freely about Jesus. And it's just one of those things like where nothing's a coincidence. Yep. It's all a path that you have to keep your eyes and ears open and to see your answers, to see the prayers that are being answered. You're not going to smack you upside the head and say, hey, I answered your prayer. And you better be careful for what you pray for, because the way it comes at you, it might not be it's probably not going to be how you see it, I had to get laid off in order to land here, right? But the journey is what it is. And if you have true faith, then you don't have any worry. Yeah. Fear and faith can't live underneath the same roof. Yeah. So that's why I'm so happy every day. And when people ask me how I'm doing and I tell you fantastic, I mean it with all I am. Like, God's amazing and life is beautiful. I quit smoking. I smoked for 25 years, but I quit 6 years ago. It's just, there's nothing that you can't do. Period. There's nothing you can't overcome. There's nothing that you can't get through. There's nothing worth giving up over. All you have to do is keep putting one foot in front of the other and have faith that God has a plan for you. And that's that's how I've gone about my life. Wow.
And so what year was it that you originally started at Nussbaum as a driver?
I started driving April 1st, 2019.
2019. Okay.
And then from there, I drove for 18 months. And through many, many conversations about the scorecard with Rick Schmidt and arguing about being able to go 65 versus 61 and what have you, I don't remember how it happened, but I had said, so you guys hire drivers in the office ever? And he's, oh yeah, we do that. We like to bring DMs in here. Why would you be interested? I said, oh yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, if there's ever an opening, just let me know. And eventually there was an opening, and that's how I ended up in the office. So naturally, when I came in the office, kind of with my background and then being a driver, and I was kind of scared and kind of freaked out. That
you'd be perceived wrong, or like just what was scary about that transition?
I think, I don't know, have tattoos, beard, I don't know. Like, I just feel, I don't know.
The beard is very scary.
Right? It's just weird, it just felt weird to be in. I've never worked in an office setting. I've always been construction. I've always worked, I was either building houses, doing landscaping. So I worked for my cousin framing houses, and then we did a lot of roofing. I did a lot of attic remodels and basement remodels and kitchens and bathrooms and what have you. So it's a whole different work environment. But it's something that I always wanted to do. I knew I couldn't build my whole life, so I knew you needed something to fall back on. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll drive a truck. And I love driving a truck. I mean, it was probably my favorite thing that I've ever done was drive that truck. Wow. But it made sense. It made sense to come in here. I was really excited to be able to help drivers. I feel like my experiences in life and my experiences over the road would help, and then it'd be nice to be home. So I took the position when I came in here. I kind of was just like, well, I want people to see that, I don't know, I belong here, I suppose. I mean, I guess I was embarrassed maybe of my past a little bit.
Sure.
That's taken some time. You know, I've been in the office now almost 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
three and a half, 4 years. So I don't know. I've told a lot of people that I work with side by side my story, and they've encouraged me to not be ashamed that God's worked miracles in my life, and to embrace it and not be afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
My sister-in-law asked me to be a panelist a couple weeks ago for the University of Illinois College of Medicine. So I did that and spoke in front of like 200 plus students and shared my story and got really good feedback on that. So it's given me a little bit more courage to come out and share my story with y'all and let you know that no matter what you're going through, no matter how bad life feels at the moment, it can get better, and it will if you just have faith and put in the work that needs to be done. Yeah.
What I like about how the verse in Jeremiah spoke to you is the book of Jeremiah is actually pretty dark. He's a prophet that is essentially living in a time period where people aren't turning to God anymore and hard things are happening. And yet in the midst of that, he speaks hope. And so, I like that. That's the verse that you kind of cling on to because, there's just going to be different seasons of life. There's going to be hard times, whether it's losing a job, drug addiction, abuse. I mean, just the world that we live in, it's filled with hard things. And I'm sure many of us might be surprised, okay, there are, whether they're in the office or they're a driver or whoever they are. I mean, we all have some sort of history or past. And sometimes I actually marvel because in your story, I feel like God knows how much each one of us can handle. And so he knew you could handle all of this. He knew you're a strong man and he could use you for good. And I don't know if not saying some people are weaker and they can't handle as much, but he doesn't give us more than we can bear. And so you must have a really strong back or something. But it's true. He knows how much each one of us can carry, and he's not going to let us carry it alone.
Right.
So,
Nice.
I think your story brings a lot of hope. It shows how God can heal and build up the broken things, and I'm really, really glad you're willing to share it.
Yeah, it's been good for sure.
So, any last thoughts or comments?
No, just remember that each of us are going through something. You never know what. Just be kind. I mean, sometimes life can be intense. It can be frustrating. It can be maddening.
Yeah.
But just remember that what's going on in your life, it'll pass. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Those things worth doing never are easy.
Yep.
And life is worth doing.
Yeah.
And that's really all I got.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Anthony.
Yep, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Hey everyone, this is Caleb from Nussbaum Recruiting, and I'd love to answer any questions you have about driving with us. Give us a call at 309-268-1199 or visit nussbaumjobs.com. Hope to talk to you soon. You've been listening to Terminal Exchange, the official podcast of Nussbaum Transportation. If you're enjoying our content, please leave us a review. Your reviews help us spread the word about these important topics and invite more people into the conversation. You can rate and review us on your podcast app or visit us online at terminalexchange.org. New episodes arrive every other Tuesday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow Nussbaum on your favorite social media platforms and be the first to know when new episodes are released. Thanks for listening. Until next time, own every moment and stay purpose-driven.